Hindu temple gopurams have lots of erotic sculpture. Doesn't this show that Hindus always view women as sex symbols? Asks a friend. Let me answer him in some detail. First, some corrections. It is not just the gopurams, but also outer walls of many temples and even pillars in the outer mandapas of the temples have erotic sculptures. And most of the erotic sculptures are of Mithuna type, means it is always depicted with couples, not just women. So there are beautiful, handsome men as well as women depicted in these sculptures. And there are many sculptures which just express the beauty of the male and female body, not necessarily erotic, but just a celebration of human body. So why the temples do have such sculptures? Before that, let's see, the very objection that a temple, a place of worship, should not have such sculptures depicting sex. So the very reason why such a thought comes is because of the conditioning of Christianity and also a Victorian mindset. Unfortunately, even many Indians are caught up with that mindset. Christianity viewed sex as the original sin. So, according to Christianity, all humans are born because of the original sin, that is, sex, committed by Adam and Eve. And that is why, even in the language, the very verb sinning became the equivalent of having sex. But Hinduism did not have such a view. So, Hindu Dharma uh, described four goals of human life: dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. So, kama, desire and a pleasure of fulfilling that desire, has a very lofty place in the Hindu philosophy and worldview. Of course, the kama, the desire, and artha, the accumulation of wealth, should always be controlled and restrained by dharma, the righteous universal law. That's what the Hindu Dharma says. So, celebration of sex was actually considered as a good thing in Hinduism and not as a feeling of guilt or sin, the way it was considered in Christianity and in later Victorian mindset. So that is why the temple has that. And again, a temple is not just a mere place of worship or a place of congregation or a place where religious dogma is expounded. So, in the Hindu world, a temple is a representation of an entire cosmos. It's a representation of life in all its fullness. It is an expression of a harmonious blending of divinity and humanity. Not just humanity, but all forms of life. So naturally, that's why the temple has so much art. So just a mere place of worship need not have all that. So within that scheme of things, the temples also have erotic sculptures. And if you notice, the erotic sculptures are always confined to the outer wall or the gopura or just the outward structure of the temple and never the inward, the inner sanctum, where the divinity is represented in its absolute, the Brahman, what we call in the Hindu philosophy. So each deity, whether it is Shiva or Vishnu or Lakshmi or Saraswati, they do not just represent a personification, but they represent the absolute Brahman. So, which is devoid of all characteristics in its true sense. So, the depiction of the erotic sculptures in the outer walls conditions the mind of the people visiting the temple. In fact, Osho Rajneesh, the great Indian philosopher and mystic, says that even in temples like Khajuraho, where some extreme erotic sculptures are there, it prepares the mind of the sadhaka, or, or the spiritual seeker, to leave all these layers of karma outside before entering the core spirituality. So, it is really a very good thing that the temples have such sculptures, and not just the temples. You see the Hindu art in its entirety. So, the painting, the music, the dance forms, the Hindu literatures. The greatest of Sanskrit poets is Kalidasa, and he celebrates sex and desire in its unabashed glory in all his works. So, and just a mere depiction of sex or erotica doesn't mean that women or men, for that matter, are viewed as sex symbols. So that is because for us to substantiate that, the entire idea of a feminine or masculine should be viewed only in sexist terms. In fact, much of the modern consumerist advertising does that. That uses the woman as sex symbol, just to sell a product, just as a commodity. But if you see the Hindu sculptures, they are really beautiful. In fact, many scholars of art, like Dr. Ananda Kumaraswamy, have studied these sculptures, and what they say is that what the sculptures express is something very sublime. It's sublime art. So, the depiction of Parvati as a quintessential feminine beauty. So, so that is something very sublime and not just a mere sex symbol. So, anyone familiar with art would agree. And in fact, ironically, it is not just Hindu art, even a Christian art for that matter, uh, the Renaissance art particularly, is actually a celebration of sensuality and sex, right? So you see this Michelangelo's sculpture of David inside a chapel in all its nakedness. So Michelangelo created it with the mind of a great artist, but the later Pope, who was offended just looking at that sculpture, uh, he ordered for covering of the private parts of the sculpture in a typical Christian and Victorian prudishness. You see other sculptures like Ecstasy of Saint Teresa, which is a very, very famous chapel sculpture. It also a celebration of female sensuality. So the erotica, or the expression of the masculine and feminine body, is an artistic universal which is seen in all cultures. No, it's not just confined to the Hindu art or Hindu sculpture. The only difference is that the the Hindus actually accepted and celebrated it without any sense of guilt or any prudishness, with an open mind, because the Hindu philosophy and ethics from the beginning created such an atmosphere. Whereas the artists like Michelangelo or the Renaissance painters had to always disguise it, fearing the censorship by the church. So, I hope I have sufficiently answered it. Thank you.